This is an audio program called Africa Before Dark, created by Casimir Marshall. We will begin with the production of Casimir Marshall's audio play, Africa Before Dark, starring Stephanie Marshall, followed by the playing of a composition by the ominous hashtag Gasmask titled Let. The audio play will begin now.
Far beyond the pitfalls of civilization is the African jungle. I was flown out to Africa from Australia for an all-expenses-paid wedding of my childhood best friend Jean, whom I haven't seen since I was 3. Despite not seeing Jean for a considerable amount of time, an all-expenses-paid wedding in Africa is nothing to turn down. How could I, seeing as I was the best bride's man? Our accommodation was in the jungle, in these cabins on stilts on the river's bank. To get there, we had private canoes soundlessly row us down the river, passing giraffes majestically sipping the water and vervet monkeys eating each other's ticks. The night air smells of dry spices and smoke, like you were a mere ember in a glorious gargantuan bonfire, fueling it, assisting it in burning brighter just by you being there to witness its effervescent inferno. In this faraway place, tucked away from suburban comforts one grows accustomed to, I found myself feeling deeply spiritual movements within my soul. Something was telling me something. And that something was that something about the sums of things in my life had been leading up to something, and that what it meant was nothing now. The only something left was Africa. The network of cabins served as a kind of tropical dormitory. All of the other wedding guests would pass each other by on elevated pathways to and from the lavatory quarters and the shared kitchen and living area. In the mornings, we would meet together and enjoy our separate breakfasts, made using ingredients from back where we came from so as not to get homesick. I regularly enjoyed a bowl of Weet-Bix. The Pommies would have fried eggs and bacon. The Swedish gunman would have some oatmeal, and the one American couple would try to make everyone else jealous by stinking up the kitchen with their waffles and maple syrup. During the dead of night, I'd sneak into the kitchen and make some waffles for myself just to spite them. I do deserve it though, considering my dedication to my childhood friend. The first 3 days leading up to the day of the wedding passed like a dream does, and I remember it as if it were one, which is to say, vividly. On the day of the wedding, however, which was scheduled to occur just outside of the cabin complex, we all awoke to find no traces of any wedding event at all. No caterers, decorators, seats, archway, no priest to officiate, and no bride and groom to get married. Naturally, I first went to the kitchen to make myself some more waffles while the American couple were distracted by the strange occurrence. But upon my return, all of the guests were still very confused and beginning to get hysterical. They simply didn't know what to make of the whole ordeal. Calls were made, emails were sent, neither by me, to the bride and or groom as to why or how the wedding didn't go ahead that day. But we never got an answer. The Swedish gunman launched into a debate on whether or not this could be a sign for the two to not get married. One argued that this is an ample sign to call it off, because if they can't plan an African wedding, how can they be expected to organise buying a house or paying taxes? Another argued that this no-show can indicate that they're perfectly happy together, so much so that they're confident in running away from their lives hand in hand. The third gunman proposed that this is actually a sign for all the guests to get married. I was inclined to agree with the second gunman, because who wouldn't rather live in Africa than in lousy, good-for-nothing wherever Jean is from? More days passed, and with each passing day, one of the guests would decide to venture up the river and into the town to see if anyone there knew what was going on. None would ever come back. The Americans went out further into the jungle instead to look for the supposed detached private cabin reserved for the newlyweds and see if the bride and groom snuck off there early to lay with each other. But I think it was because they wanted to sleep together in a romantic private cabin, despite the rest of us even more. They didn't return either, which joyously meant that there was now more waffles for me. One golden afternoon along the river, of which by this point everyone except me ventured and evaporated, I spotted a hippo bathing in the water. As the sun set and dipped behind the hippo's buoyant body, the creature locked eyes with me. It was as if the two of us had a silent, deep, philosophical conversation that lasted until the sun went down, when I could no longer see the beautiful animal. The conversation we had was about everything, nothing, and something all at the same time, and in it, while stoking it, I felt indescribable. It was as if I was a force of nature, another animal like the beast undoubtedly still staring at me through the dark in this beautiful vast savannah. That night, in my cabin, by moonlight, I let myself fall onto my bed. There I lay, moist with sweat like a hippo bathing in a river. I locked eyes with myself through a mirror of spices and embers and conversed with myself, African to African, forever.
We will now hear the ominous hashtag Gasmask's Let. This is the end of the audio program Africa Before Dark, created by Casimir Marshall. Thank you for watching, and if you wish to show your support, feel free to subscribe.